Now, that example I played for you of the project of mine a couple of videos ago with the choir is a good introduction to our first big topic of part two of this class. So, what we're going to dive into right now, and that is atmosphere. Now, atmosphere is something that we work with for a particular kind of cue. You can do it in a lot more spaces than you would expect. But what we're talking about here is a cue in which you really want to stay out of the way of a lot of stuff happening. Typically, when we talk about atmosphere, we're talking about a subdued feeling. Something very spacious, something very open. I guess we could think of atmosphere in terms of a really chaotic scene also. We could think of it in a lot of different contexts, but primarily what we're talking about when we say we want atmosphere here is something very slow, something subdued, and something kind of passive. We use a lot of different sounds for this. The orchestra works well for this kind of atmospheric sense. If we're working with electronic elements, something called a pad works really well too. And we're going to talk about all that stuff in just a minute. I think of atmosphere a lot. If you see a scene in which there's like a panning, meaning like the camera is like moving across a sunset, an outdoor scene like what we're seeing here on the screen now. Planets, like if we're out in space and we see planets, and we're just kind of perceive the vastness of this space. Nature, but for me, nature is a little bit different, but that can work too. Water, something huge. I think I like atmospheres when we're looking at something huge, like the earth or a big landscape or like the ocean, because you can't write something that is big enough to symbolize that. So instead you go with small and quiet. You imagine what the sound is in that space. So it's a little hard to explain. So let's look at some examples. I have two examples for you here. One, something kind of intense and atmospheric, and another one that's just kind of happy in its own kind of sad way. Hard to explain. This is a tough to explain concept, which is why we're going to look at some cues here. Okay, so let's break to a new film and then we'll talk about some examples.